Now, it's your turn. Who has a question of any or all? Okay, now this is scary if we're going to have a voice. Yes, you. I feel like you over there.
Yes, you.
I'm the accountant. One of the things, we've got a new enterprise tool that we're utilizing in Duke Energy, cuts across all the business units. How do you go about not inflicting, but changing the culture? It could be inflicting. But it's entirely different in terms of how you manage that type of tool. And how do you go about changing culture that is so ingrained where the business unit owns something? What's your advice in terms of how do you start to change the culture of an organization?
Who'd like to take a crack at that?
I'll start with something. I think the main way you change the culture is to change the language. We enforce and share things or whatever all through our words. And one of the things I know when I have been in a situation where I was working in something that I thought was a non-productive, negative culture that needed to get changed to something constructive, one of the things was just there were just certain things that just, no, we aren't going to say it that way. We aren't going to dwell on it. We aren't going to use our time that way. We are going to own that even though it feels like something is being done to us, you cannot see, we will not be a victim. Martyrs are volunteer positions, and I refuse to be one. It can make you do that. And so really, I do think there is something to example and language that just starts to permeate. And so I don't know the specifics of yours, because certainly there can be a lot of rebellion against command and control, but it is like we do these things. A culture change happens a building block at a time. It cannot be imposed from above. It cannot be mandated. It cannot be wished for. It can only be changed. And I think the first thing you need to change is your language, because that's what we follow.
Can I just add one thing? I can't help myself. I agree with you, Judy, and I always defined culture as how we do things around here in order to succeed. And you have to change the culture, you have to do how you do those things. And that might be changing people, it might be changing expectations, and it might be changing people out. I remember once years ago when I worked in HR, we had a training program called Change Management. And I'll never forget it, the place was packed. And some guy sitting in the back, he goes, I'm really disappointed in this, because he took it very literally. He thought it meant changing management versus change management. So you have to shake it up, has been my experience. Any of the rest of you?
Yeah, I just would echo everything that's said. I have a friend, I'm going to borrow her phrase, and it is, when all is said and done, what did you say and what did you do? And that's what it's all about. And the other thing I would just add is you have to stay at it. You can do it for a year and you think you've got it, it will fall apart. It is constant. You have to be relentless if you want to make a change, and it'll take you years.
And true to form, I have something to say as well. And that is FaceTime, FaceTime, FaceTime. Talk to people. Talk to other stakeholders. Talk to people all across the spectrum who are working on your project. This is a different type of culture change, but when I went out to New Mexico as the president of the gas company, and I walked in and I introduced myself to a room of about 100 operating guys, and I was finished making my little introductory comments. They all, assumed I would just leave then. I walked into the group of guys who were all kind of sitting there, with that expression on the face, pulled out the chair, sat down, and started asking them questions. So, how many services do you guys, whatever they were working on, asking them questions, and they were speechless. And so I think that now I walk in and people talk to me. But if you don't make that effort to talk to everybody and invest in FaceTime, in my opinion, you're not going to change a culture.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
Hi. So there's some anecdotal discussions about the mean girl dynamic where women aren't very nice to each other. And the research says that that's a problem where there is a heavy degree of gender bias. There aren't a lot of women in the field. I'm wondering if your experience proves that. And true to your discussion about leadership being personal and anything you can do is really on the margins, what are some strategies that you guys have used when you have experienced or seen that taking place? Thanks.
Who wants to go with that? Not everybody at once.
I haven't seen it. I don't think, and I don't believe I've experienced it. I do believe, for where I work, that, I mean, my experience has been, and part of this is how do I choose to see the world, is that we're taking folks as they come with the skills they bring and what they contribute, and sometimes it is just what did you contribute today, but that I don't see a lot of the gender issues, and I think I choose not to, frankly, and just keep plodding along. And that's where I guess I felt like once I became convinced of the value of my contribution and took the advice of my advisor that said, you know, you're thinking about other folks as their opinion of you way, way, way more than you should, and just let that shed off. I think that made everything better. It just made everything better. And then in that part, then because I was more comfortable with it, I think others were more comfortable with me. So I don't believe I've experienced it or see it. I do think, or at least I have in other discussions heard of the issue more of, and I think it might be more generational than it is necessarily gender, but that the folks kind of feeling like, what's with these young folks coming up thinking that they can have such a flexible schedule when I worked the 3 in the morning to 7 at night shift? What's with them that think that they're entitled to that? And that's not necessarily woman whatever, it's just the generation coming in that expects a lot more for their workplace, a lot more resources, a lot more flexibility, and they just are demanding it. And that's where we have tension. And I can tell you there's probably times I've had to catch myself and go, what makes you think you can do that? I never got to do that. Well, you know what? If we want to keep them in the workforce, we have to find ways that we can let them do that. So I do think that that's a distinction that I come across and have to catch myself on. But I see that in both women and men, frankly. I think that folks coming into the workforce just expect a lot of us, and I'm not sure we're quite, to your point, Ann, quite ready to provide it yet because we're a little hierarchical and a little old-fashioned.
Mm-hmm. And, to your question, I've thought about this question a lot because it comes up quite a bit. And I think that, in looking back over my career and kind of watching other people since I've started hearing this question, I think that it happens in both genders. I think that you have, men who are wonderful and supportive men who can't stand you and stand in your way. Same thing with women. I think the reason that this is a question is that it is more painful when it's another woman that does it. And so I don't really think that it happens more necessarily with women or men, but I think women look to other women in leadership roles, for that kind of mentoring relationship. There's hopefully you're looking for a bond. And when someone, takes a negative approach to you, it's really a slap in the face. So I think I'd challenge you to think, is it really woman to woman as a greater preponderance, or is it that sensitivity to it? And I think one of the ways to overcome that is, who doesn't like being asked for input or advice? Gosh, I've watched you in meetings. I just love the way that you interact with people. Is there any chance we could sit down and talk about that sometime? The people who don't seem to like you. People respond to that kind of thing. I've had some success with that. Not always, but some success with that. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment. Julie gave us the answer. Reach out. The more we do things like this, get people together. In Chicago, we have a number of women sort of driven organizations, just getting women together to talk to each other, that I think, reaching out it's a lot of work. It's very labor intensive when you go, because, one-on-one time, Julie talked about that, Annette talked about that, and taking people out to breakfast, even if you just sit down for a cup of coffee for a half an hour in the morning before your day gets started, all that stuff makes a difference. And I think that's where you get people coming together and being supportive.
Yeah. Another thing that makes a big difference is don't play that game. I've experienced it and I've seen it. Rise above it, don't participate in it, because people watch what you do. And work hard to celebrate women's successes as colleagues. And don't take personally what's not personal. One more question, and then I think I'm getting the wrap signal here. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
The question that I have is, often we talk a lot about culture in an organization, and I work for ComEd, so I'm a huge fan of Anne Pramaggiore here. But Anne shared a quote with us at one time, and I believe it was from a book that you once read, that said, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. And we are going through a lot of cultural changes within ComEd, and I see it throughout the entire industry. However, it's a two-part question. One is, my thoughts are, so you get the culture in place. Is that next evolution of the transformation, is it really allowing your thought leaders to emerge in the organization? And if you agree with that statement, what are some of the strategies or things that you all have done to allow those thought leaders to have a voice in the company?
Sure. Can I
Sure.
I'll start?
It's your company.
Yay, ComEd. Thank you, Nicole. It's actually, the book is called Exploiting Chaos, and it tracks businesses. It's a real easy read. It's got lots of big pictures and words, so I'm recommending it to you as a flight, something to read on a flight. But it talks about it kind of has sort of really short case studies of companies going through transformational change, and some companies who missed it and don't exist anymore, and others who caught the wave, and what are the elements that contribute to it. And there is a phrase in there, and this is actually, interestingly, a sign that is in Ford's strategy room or boardroom, and it says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And obviously the point is, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if your culture can't support that, you're going nowhere. So in answer to your question, I think that absolutely the culture shift that I think we need at our company in any event is, what I talked about before. We don't have enough time. The world is moving too fast to wait for ideas to sort of come from here and work their way through an organization. They've got to come everywhere. It's chaos. It's that's the name of the book, Exploiting Chaos. You have to have ideas here, 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 and that's what moves you forward. So the culture has to change to support that. And I think what you have to do, it gets back to what do you say and what do you do. So you have to talk about it, you have to let people know that that's the expectation, and then you have to put in place the institutions in your organization that will support that. And that can be sending an email around when somebody came up with a great idea to let everybody know this person is a hero because they came up with this wonderful idea. It can be at our leadership meetings. We've now put in a section that gets addressed at every single meeting every month for our top 150 employees in the company, called Innovation Corner. And we try to get 2 different ideas that came through from different parts of the company and highlight those. So, what do you talk about? What do you support with your institutions? What do you recognize and award, reward employees for? And I think that's how you get the change.
Thanks, Anne. Anybody else? With that, would you please join me in celebrating and thanking these amazing, energetic leaders?